It's payday! I just got my check from Uncle Sam. I love this day. It's my favorite day of the month. Nothing beats the smell of fresh US dollars. There's been some criticism in the US about the money America sends us. And as an Israeli Jew, I thought I would tell you firsthand what we do with all the money you send us. So what do we do with all this money? Half of it goes to our annual vacation. You know, living in Israel, we really need a break. And the other half goes to bribing members of Congress. It's not that expensive to bribe them, but there are just so many of them. Personally, I'm responsible for bribing the representative from Wisconsin. I stick a few $1,000s in an envelope, write happy birthday on it or something, and when I meet with them, it's very important to slide the envelope under the table. That is what Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson might tell you we do with the money. But now let's talk seriously. Yes, America gives a lot of money to Israel, around $3.5 billion a year, through the Foreign Military Financing FMF program. But, and this is a very big but, Israel is required to use 75% of that money to purchase American-made military equipment. And by 2028, that will go up to 100%. So in reality, US aid to Israel is largely a subsidy to the American arms industry. And I say that with zero criticism, of course. In a perfect world, there would be no need for a weapon industry. But in our world, I'm glad the US has one of the best. This is also where the strategic cooperation between Israel and America becomes very visible. Take one of the most iconic and, if I may say, beautiful aircrafts of the past few decades, the F-15. 75% of all enemy kills made by F-15s were done by Israeli pilots. And its younger brother, the F-16s, 50% of all kills were made by Israeli pilots. Why does that matter? When you design a product, you think it will work well, but you don't really know until it is tested in the field. Israel serves as a real-world testing lab for many American technologies: planes, tanks, defense systems, you name it. Unfortunately, our neighbors still reject the idea of a Jewish state and continue to attack us, which means we end up field testing these technologies under real combat conditions. And when Israel tests it and it works, other armies want to buy it. But Israel doesn't just test these systems, it also develops them. That's why so many US tech companies have R&D centers in Israel. And that innovation is reflected in military tech too. Iron Dome, David Sling, and other systems are the product of joint US-Israel development that benefits both countries. Even systems in the F-35, Israel was the first to use it operationally, have been upgraded based on Israeli feedback and are now used by the US military. In 1982, US Secretary of State Alexander Haig said, "Israel is the largest American aircraft carrier in the world that cannot be sunk, does not carry even one American soldier, and is located in a critical region for American national security." Another area where Israel helps the US is by providing access to enemy technology. Israel faces off in battle against advanced Russian and Iranian weaponry, and the intelligence gathered is shared directly with the US. Everyone talks about US aid to Israel, but let's look at two examples of aid that barely get any attention. The US military presence in Japan and South Korea. These countries host American troops, which Israel does not. And the annual cost of the American military presence in Japan and South Korea is twice as much as the aid sent to Israel. I've never heard any criticism about that. Another example is US aid to Egypt and Jordan. Together, Egypt and Jordan receive about $3 billion in aid, just like Israel. But unlike Israel, much of that aid is not military and doesn't return to US economy, especially in Jordan's case. AOC has criticized military aid to Israel, but I haven't heard her say a word about US support for Egypt. And as a feminist from the progressive left, you would think she would be horrified by the fact that 80% of Egyptian women suffer from, you know what I refer to. But apparently, human rights only matters to progressive when the villain is a white male. Of course, there is legitimate criticism of the aid, even in Israel. It creates excessive dependence, it hurts Israel's domestic defense industry, it increases vulnerability to US political pressure, it encourages an arms race. The more the US gives Israel, the more it gives to Arab countries. And perhaps most importantly, it doesn't look good. We've now seen how this aid is weaponized in public opinion against Israel. Even Netanyahu has spoken in the past about the need to phase it out. I'm not a military expert, just a low-level Mossad agent working undercover as a tour guide. But here is what I do know. If you strip away all the noise, pros, cons, politics, F-15s, the US-Israeli alliance is not based on money. It's based on shared values, on democracy, freedom, and the principle of the West. And these values are the ones that make this alliance so strong. Every time I say that Israel or the US are democracies, there's always someone in the comments writing, Israel is not a democracy. Try living in an actual non-democratic country. Try criticizing Putin in Russia and see how quickly your odds of falling from a balcony skyrocket. Or go to a Muslim country where saying a word against the leadership can lead you in prison, or worse. Then come back and talk to me about Israel and the US. Anyone living in the West who takes freedom of speech and democracy for granted has no idea how lucky they are. The fact that Israel and the US are strong, stable, and stand together, that drives some woke right and progressives crazy. Because to them, to the progressives, victimhood is the highest virtue. But here is a thought. There is nothing noble about being weak. And being strong, that's not a sin. The US and Israel will continue to be strong, and they will continue defending the values that truly matter: freedom, democracy, and human rights, against the Islamists who want to spread Sharia law and theocracy across the world. My next video is going to expose something called Gazawood, the fake video industry coming out of Gaza. It's a coordinated effort to manipulate the West with stage footage. Because again, if your only moral currency is being victim, you will fake it if you have to. And a lot of people in the West fall for it. I will break it all down in the next video. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. Thank you to my amazing supporters. You are the reason I keep going. See you in the next one. Yalla bye.